Welcome to the Chit, Chat and Crochet Podcast EP6. So we are discussing today the film adaptations of Rebecca. This is the second part of a two-part series. Last week we discussed the book at length and I realised that I spoke for 2 hours. So I really needed to get this down. And I thought the best way of me doing that is 1 week we talk about the book and then the following week we'll talk all about the films. So if you haven't watched that episode, I'm going to link that down below so you can go there, catch up with us all and then come back. Right, I'm going to give you a minute. Okay, we're back. Fabulous. Right, cool. So let's get on with talking about the movies. Now, let's talk about the adaptations because this book has been turned into movies so many times. The first time it was turned into a movie was in 1940, 2 years after the book gets released. Hitchcock takes it and he turns it into a masterpiece. It's so Hitchcockian. It's so amazing. He pulls out all of his tools, the music, the lighting, the drama of it all. It's not really Daphne Du Maurier's Rebecca, it's Hitchcock's Rebecca. And I think that's a lot of like the issues that I've had with some of the adaptations is I need to remind myself that I'm not looking at Daphne Du Maurier's interpretation, I'm looking at somebody else's interpretation of that story. And although it's not completely accurate to the book, I absolutely adore it. So in Rebecca, and I feel like this is the only film that kind of gets this across. So in Rebecca, our heroine is in a constant daydream. She is just making up scenarios in her head. She's moving from daydream to the next. And this is the only version that really kind of gets this across. Joan Fontaine, who plays Mrs. De Winter, sometimes like Max will say something to her and she just kind of goes off into like this weird kind of like, she's looking into the distance. And we, the viewer, are understanding this because there is a soundtrack that plays from the start to the finish. There's no quiet in this film. It's got this amazing score and there's like the Rebecca music, which is very eerie. I think they've used that music, a theremin or something. It's very eerie and kind of like they really get this horror feel going across. The way they use the light as well, it's really like chiaroscuro and I just love it. It's like so amazing. So the characters, you've got Mrs. De Winter played by Joan Fontaine. Maximilian De Winter is played by Laurence Olivier. Love a Laurence Olivier moment, like oh my gosh. And Mrs. Danvers, she's played by Judith Anderson. I think she does a really good job of Mrs. Danvers. She has this quite a stern look on her face, but again, I think like with Hitchcock, it's a lot of the tools that he uses, the light and the music, it also kind of pushes that as well. So there's like a little bit of a lift with that. So what I'm going to talk about with these films is how it ends, what happens to Rebecca, what happens to Danvers, is it a good vid, what do I like and what do I don't like? That's kind of what I'm going to summarise within this. I'm not going to go through the plot again because we've already done that. We all know the plot of Rebecca now. Should know it by the back of our hands. Now, for me, a big talking point is what happens to Danvers, because in the book it's left loose. But in the films, they kind of play a little bit about her fate. Now, in this, the end of Rebecca, Danvers dies in this fiery blaze. She's lit mandalay light and you can see the flames behind her and she's walking through Rebecca's room. Oh my goodness, so many practical effects, absolutely amazing. And then the roof kind of falls and caves in and it's so over the top and so dramatic. So I understand why they kind of did that and I'm quite happy with that ending when I'm kind of watching that film because everything is just like tuned up to 100. It's like high camp, it's so over the top and it's like you need an over the top ending for this over the top plot and the over the top acting. One thing that I can't really abide by though is how Rebecca passes away. It's kind of like played off like as an accidental death, like she falls and she hits her head and she was no more, and then Max kind of panics and then, you know, puts her out into the boat. Even though they were arguing, it's kind of not seen as his action. Now that could literally be because of the audiences at the time. Maybe they didn't want to they couldn't deal with a man kind of murdering his wife like on the television, so maybe that is the reason for that. We don't know, but that's kind of like the read that I had on it, and I don't really like that part of the book, to be honest. So I don't really like that part of the film. What I love about this is I love the opening scene. Joan Fontaine's voice coming out and literally just saying the monologue from the book. And I love the miniature. Oh my goodness, the miniature. And you can just see this model and I just love it. I love practical effects. So that for me was like pressing a lot of dopamine buttons. Also, I love the portrayal of Mrs. Van Hopper. Because she's played in such a grotesque way. There's this one bit where she like takes her medicine and she hates it and she's like, oh, give me a chocolate, and she like shoves this like chocolate into her mouth. Oh my gosh, it's like so cartoonish. I absolutely love it. And again, I think with this version is again just the tools that Hitchcock has and the way he makes you feel, the way they keep, every time they walk past Rebecca's door, the eerie kind of Rebecca music plays and they zoom into the door. It really captures this kind of gothic novel feel that the other versions just don't even come near. Bad thing about this movie, okay, again, the way Rebecca passes away, but also the meeting. I feel like they miss a trick. So the movie opens and Max is kind of standing on a cliff's edge, and then he ends up meeting the heroine, and that's how they meet. They don't do the part where they end up meeting in the hotel and stuff like that, and it just kind of felt like a little pointless. It kind of felt like a little bit like, oh. And there's also some other like additional scenes, like when they get married and things like that, which I'm like, did we need that? There's other places that I think you could have added more stuff in, and that would have, made like more towards the plot, I think. But that's my only criticism. I think if I was rating this, it would be like an 8 out of 10. Definitely a hard 8. So my final thoughts on this. I love the way they play up her daydreaming. When Beatrice says she simply adored Rebecca, and Joan Fontaine's head just kind of tilts to the side and she just kind of like looks off into the distance and the camera zooms into her face. And then just no more conversation with Beatrice, now in Rebecca's head. And I just loved it so much. I love that there's like a dinner scene and they're all sat down at this dinner scene and there's all like this like little jaunty like happy music, like a little happy family, and then suddenly Rebecca gets mentioned and the tone just changes. So that again is just, that does something that the other versions don't come near to, is capturing the emotion better than the other versions do. I think that in this version as well, you do feel a complete disconnect between the two main characters, Max and the Mrs. De Winter. There doesn't seem to be any kind of connection between the two of them. Like there's a whole part where they're watching like home movies and they like practically like nearly break up. And yeah, I don't know if I really like that part, to be honest with you. And it's like the home movies, like why are they watching home movies? Like that doesn't make any sense. When is this set? When is this? But then again, rich person, 1940s, he's got access to that, so maybe they would. I don't know. I wasn't there. And also Danvers gets confronted at the ball. Like they just move that plot along really, really quick, where it's like if you cut out that scene where they're watching home movies and just like kind of like put more effort into that, we might have seen a bit more of the ball scene. You kind of see people running down when they hear the rockets go and they're running down the lawn, but you don't really get much experience at the ball, which I think was a shame, because you have these amazing big painted backgrounds and like the way it was all filmed in California on a sound stage. But again, maybe it was down to cost. Don't show the ball, we'll do a scene like that way. So it could have been costume. So that was my final thoughts on the 1940s. Let's go on to the 1979 version with Jeremy Brett playing Maximilian de Winter and Joanna David playing Mrs. de Winter. I love this version. So first, I love Jeremy Brett. I think he does a fantastic job of portraying Max de Winter. I think he has this good balance between the way he has this connection with Mrs. De Winter. It's not a complete disconnect to these extreme moments of anger. I think he plays that in a really balanced way. You have Anna Massey playing Danvers. I don't really like this decision because I think she's too young to play Mrs. Danvers. And I feel like a lot of her acting, she's really amazing, at portraying Danvers. But I feel like part of it is lost because of her age. You do kind of feel like a bit of a disconnect, and I don't really believe it because of that. I think they also try to age her up as well, which doesn't really land. I think Joanna David did a really good job as well. Like, she really kind of comes across as meek, timid, and I think she comes across very well in that. I think as well, like, her body language, and she seems quite unsure of herself in every movement. So the end of Danvers, this is the only version of Rebecca that does it to the book. You don't know what happens to Danvers. She is out there lurking in the shadows. It's accurate in terms of Rebecca's end as well. Max shoots her, so that is, you know what that end is. And yes, it is kind of low budget in terms of the other versions, but I think what they do is they put their energy into the stuff that matters and they get the book accurate. So I always recommend it to people if they say that they're not going to read the story. I always say watch the 1979 version. That is I think it's the longest version. It was a TV adaptation, and I think that that's going to really give you the story in the way Du Maurier actually would have wanted it to be told. The only thing I will say about the ending is it does feel a little quick. I think that it ends quite abruptly, and I think that's probably one of my only real criticisms. And also, I don't like the guy who plays Jack Favell, because, and again, I'm trying to be nice. He just kind of doesn't come across as somebody that, in my head, what I imagine Jack Favell to look like. You think that, Rebecca being the most beautiful person of all time, and Jack Favell just kind of seems like a bit like schlubby, if that makes sense. I'm trying to be nice. I'm really trying to be nice. I'm not trying to be horrible to this actor, but it's not what I picture when I see Jack Favell in my head. And I don't really feel like he gets across the menace of Jack Favell either, to be honest. I think the best performance, though, is Jeremy Brett's, because I feel, again, he gets that really good balance of kind of kindness and he coming across as like this angry man. And I think that he really studied this book and really kind of embodied Max and didn't really put much of himself into that. I think he really tried to think about the character and who that character is and his motivations behind his actions. He does have this new wife. He does love this new wife. He wants to be with this person, but he's haunted, and that is the driving force behind those reactions. He's not outrightly cruel like some of the other versions. I think this is the only version where he's not like just horrible for the sake of being horrible. That is my thoughts on the 1979 version. Let's move on to the 1997 version. And this is where you have Charles Dance playing Maximilian de Winter, and you have Amelia Fox playing Mrs. de Winter. What's really interesting about this is Amelia Fox is the daughter of Joanna David, who played Mrs. de Winter in the 1979 version. So that's an amazing connection there. Now, this is a higher budget version. So if you're into more the high budget, I would say this is probably the version for you. I'd say it's probably, again, more accurate, because like the 1979 version, that was filmed in Cornwall, and so was this. These two TV adaptations are both filmed in Cornwall, which is such a key part of Rebecca. Cornwall is like another character in the book. Mrs. Danvers is played by the legendary Diana Rigg, and she is my favourite Danvers. I think that, again, she's age appropriate. You really get this feeling of like, she's so frightening. She is like the mother-in-law from hell. Like, that is like the feeling that I get when I'm watching Diana Rigg play Danvers. She is so frightening, so scary, so commanding. And you really get, like, every part of her just oozes grief and hatred. And I just think she's like so formidable and just amazing. She is my favourite Danvers. It doesn't stick to the plot 100%. They do their own thing. They add in some more scenes. There's a whole scene where they come back on a cruise ship, and Charles Dance, I think that he portrays Max very, very well. Obviously this is in my opinion. These are like classically trained actors. This is just like my very like uneducated opinion, but I'm allowed to have my opinions. So Charles Dance, when he's playing Max, I feel like he comes across a little bit too mean. I feel like he comes across like just intentionally cruel, where I don't feel like that is like Max's like intention. But that's his way of portraying it. I'm like, you know, you go off, sis, it's like fine. But then on the other hand, he's coming across like too angry, but he also comes across like too friendly in the same time. Like the way they meet, in the book and in the other versions, she's coming into the restaurant. Mrs. Van Hopper's sick. She knocks over a glass of water. The whole table gets wet. And then he's like, come and sit with me. But it's kind of like, oh, you can come sit with me. But that doesn't happen. He just outwardly invites her to come and sit with him on the patio, which I don't know. Just, it comes across too nice, and it's like whiplash when he's horrible. Also, Mrs. Van Hopper is played by Faye Dunaway, which is just like, I love Faye Dunaway. I mean, Mummy Dearest is like one of my favourite films. And I would say that her acting is very much in the realm of Mummy Dearest in this role. She is like over the top. She is flirting with Max, and she's just like so crazy. And I feel like they stretched out her scenes because of who she is. They got this cat, they got Faye Dunaway, so let's stretch the character of Mrs. Van Hopper. There's a whole scene where she's having one of the parties and Max attends the party and then has this like giant outburst. And then like he leaves and she's like, it's only a party. And it's like, it's like so cartoony, like so cartoonish. It's like crazy. So the end of Danvers is, again, the way I take it is she dies in a fiery blaze. Mandalay is on fire. Max runs into the house and is carrying Danvers down the stairs, where he trips and then they both fall and they're both lying on the floor with all the fire of Mandalay going around, and then the camera just pans to the portrait of of Caroline de Winter in flames, which again, very over the top, very, very cartoonish, very, very high camp. And they do the ending right when Max shoots her, which is, you know, I'm glad that they stuck to that ending and it wasn't kind of like, you know, washed like it was in the 1940s version. I also think this is the best portrayal of Jack Favell as well. So it was Jonathan Cake that plays Jack Favell, and I think in my head that's who I see as Jack Favell. Like he has like this little kind of like little moustache, and I don't know, he comes across quite passionate, and I really believe he's Jack Favell. One thing I really do like about this is they changed the line of, I wish I was a woman of 36 with black satin and a string of pearls. And they change it to where she says to him, I'm not a woman of 36 in black satin and a string of pearls. And I think that that's a really interesting choice. And I think that it really drives home again of, well, if you were, you wouldn't be here with me. I feel like that kind of is more impactful. It almost seems like she's more like apologetic about that rather than wishful. And it's almost like she's apologising for her age, which basically kind of brings out her insecurities more. So I think that was a really interesting choice to do. Now, what I don't like, although I love Faye Dunaway, I don't know if I like her as Mrs. Van Hopper. I think Mrs. Van Hopper comes across, I'm trying to think of a polite way of saying it. Like a lady that likes the company of gentlemen a little bit too much. I think she kind of comes across a bit over the top, and she doesn't really look sick when she's sick. I feel like, go there, do you know what I mean? It's like you didn't go there. And also, I don't like the scene when Amelia Fox playing Mrs. De Winter, when she goes into Rebecca's room and she's picking everything up and she's like smelling it all. It's like, girl, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're coming across really weird. Like, don't be smelling everything. Like, that's his dead wife. What are you doing? But then also, that feeling that I've just had, maybe it is good, because it's kind of like, oh my God, you're like going that crazy, like you're going around like smelling all this, like, you know, this woman's clothes. Like, I don't know, it just makes me feel a bit weird. Also, a thing that I don't like about this version is it's the only version where you actually see a depiction of Rebecca. You see a flash of her eyes at the start, but then they have a whole scene where it's the scene in the cottage and you're seeing it from behind, but you hear her voice and they're having this exchange of like her pushing Max, and then Max obviously then goes and kills her. I don't like that. because I don't feel like I'm looking at Rebecca. Nothing in our heads is ever going to measure up to this woman. And what I think by that decision of having her in this, it destroys that feeling. It destroys that mystery of this person that is so beautiful, so unworthy in her company. Like, that is the feeling that the book and the other versions really push, which is like, you don't have, by showing her, you're automatically trying to see what's going on. Like, by seeing her, it just destroys all of that mystery and that image in your brain. So that, in my opinion, that was a really bad choice. I think this version does a really great way of showing the power imbalance between the two characters. One thing I wanted to look at was the age differences between all of the characters. In the first version, the version with Joan Fontaine and Laurence Olivier, the age difference between those two actors was 10 years. In the 1979 version, the age difference between Joanna David and Jeremy Brett was 14 years. And in this version, the age difference between Charles Dance and Amelia Fox was a whopping 28 years. So when you're looking at, I think, again, with the way things translate on the television, 14 years, I'd say, is probably the closest. They're supposed to have a 20-year age gap, where the Jeremy Brett version is probably the closest to that sort of age gap between the characters in the book and the actors in real life. So I think the 1979 version, in terms of accuracy, is probably most realistic. 14 years is probably closer to the age difference of Max and Mrs. De Winter to the actors themselves. But one thing I will say about the 1997 version, because that age gap is so huge at 28 years, it is like looking at a father and daughter. And it is quite uncomfortable to view. And it really brings that home, that there is a giant imbalance, not just in age and experience, but obviously, again, with landed gentry, working class, and pushing that in. And I think that version does a really great way of showing that imbalance. Also, I don't like that scene where Danvers is lighting everything up and she's lying on the bed and she's crying, and, you know, she's lit everything up and she's lying on Rebecca's bed, and then suddenly you see the camera pan to like a picture of, you know, Charles Dance and Amelia Fox sort of like in an embrace, and it's like, it just felt a little cartoonish. But again, I don't like it, but then I also do like it, if that makes sense. In terms of like something being so over the top and crazy, I do quite like that. One thing I will say as well for the film, the effects were amazing. I love the effect that they did of the Mandalay on fire. And it was such a simple effect by having like smoke on the roof lit by lights. It just looked really, really, really effective. And they also had that good balance of practical effects as well, like Max running into the house. I thought it was mad when like Mrs. De Winter screams up to him, maybe she doesn't want to live. Crazy, absolutely crazy. Such high camp, love it. And it ends on a happy tone, where they're kind of, you know, they're on the continent and they're having like a nice time, which I don't really like that. I don't really like that ending. I feel like you have murdered your wife in cold blood. You should not be having a nice time. Like, I'm sorry, like, no. So let's move on to the 2020 version, which I hate. So I think hate is a strong word. I just don't like it, and I've got lots to say. So you have the heroine played by Lily James, you have Maximilian De Winter played by Armie Hammer, and you have Mrs. Danvers played by Kristen Thomas Scott. Now, first I'll talk about the age difference, because I feel like one of the huge plot points of Rebecca is a power imbalance that I don't feel like they even approached in this film. I feel like there was a complete abandonment of the core fundamentals of these characters. The core part of their personalities just did. If this is not Daphne Du Maurier's Rebecca, this is the director's version of Rebecca. When I first watched this, I was gutted. I was so gutted. I was so excited that they were bringing out a new version of Rebecca. And when you think about budgets now and the way things look, I was so excited. And I was just so disappointed. But I think that's because I'm so close to the book and I love the book so much that I was probably going to go into this with a very harsh, critical view because I expected it to be something that it didn't turn out to be. So that's on me a little bit, I will say that. I've watched it again. I watched it a few times since. I've watched it 3 or 4 times. And there are things that I do really like about this. So let's get into it. So the power imbalance, the actors, the difference in age is 3 years. So again, that age imbalance, I don't really feel like Lily James looks like a 20-year-old. She was 31 when she played this. I don't really feel like she looks that young. Again, Armie Hammer was in his early 30s. Max is supposed to be in his 40s. I don't think that that really comes across. They look too equal in age, which again, kind of, that's part of one of the key plots is like her immaturity and her, you know, the fact that he's not looking for a mature person. Does it stick to the book? Not in the slightest. I think they really, I think Mrs. De Winter is supposed to be this young girl from a working class background who was working in service. And the way they portray her is very forward. I feel like that's the kindest way I can kind of say this. She's too forward. There's a scene which I really didn't like as well, where they're kind of like out on one of their expeditions and they're looking in a telescope, and then they see a couple like going at it on a boat, and it's like naked, and like, and then suddenly it kind of gets implied that the two of them might have consummated their relationship, which I don't really feel like that's what Mrs. De Winter would have done. I don't feel like the heroine would have done that. Also, the costuming. The costumes were fantastic, but the way they dressed Mrs. De Winter, I feel like this is a woman that doesn't have a lot of money. And like there's like a whole thing where like they're coming back to Mandalay and he says like, oh, we should have, in the book, we should have stopped at London and got you some new clothes. She's dressed fantastic. She's got like these amazing like, you know, pants on. She's given like Katharine Hepburn, like, and love the costumes, love it. I think she looks fabulous, but I don't really feel like it's for the character. I don't really feel like it's for the character at all. Love the sets, love Mandalay, the way they portray Mandalay, the ball scene, oh my goodness. So that's like really amazing stuff in terms of visually. I think it's visually stunning, but not really for the story. In terms of their portrayals, Max, I feel like, you know, Armie Hammer, I don't really feel like he portrays him in a way where he's kind of like in love. I feel like it just again comes across for being mean for mean's sake. Lily James just comes across too forward. Like the scene when they're going to find out what happens to Rebecca when they go to the doctors, it's her that goes and does that. So she flees to London, she goes to the doctor's office, she breaks in. Did they have to do that? Did they have to do that? That's not what happens in the book. They go and it's all very civilized, and it's like I don't get why she's got to be the one that's like, I don't feel like the character would have done that. I don't think the character's that forward. I don't think she's that confident, so I don't know why she did that. But that's beside the point. Also, I think the policeman was going in like really hard and stuff, and I feel like the problem with sort of movies today, everything is over explained. Everything is so over explained and so over the top, and nothing's kind of left to like the mystery. I just don't get it. Don't get it. We are educated enough to be able to, you know, to understand nuance. And again, I really like the sets and stuff. I think the sets are great, but could they have not filmed in Cornwall? Could they have not filmed in Cornwall? Like, it's set in Cornwall. The other 2 versions had lower budgets and they were set in Cornwall, so why wasn't this one? And also Danvers. I really, really like Kristen Thomas Scott. I really, really like it, and I was so excited to see her as Danvers. But the way she portrays her is so flat, and maybe that is the direction that she was given, but I just feel like she's so flat in that performance. It doesn't come across as grief. It comes across as like crazy. Like that's the way I'm reading it. She doesn't come across as like having empathy. Like I don't feel sorry for her. I don't have that like emotion like the way I have like Diana Rigg, where Diana Rigg, very motivated by grief. I don't know what Kristen Thomas Scott was motivated by. Like I'm not feeling that. It just felt very flat. So yeah, it's my least favourite version. There are parts that I like. And also, do you know what? I want to talk about Beatrice as well. So Beatrice, my favourite portrayal of Beatrice is in the second version. Then it would be the third version. Then it would be the 1940s version. This one, I was so disappointed. She comes across as too soft. And I feel like I feel like none of the versions kind of get really across like Beatrice. Probably the 1979 one where she has like this like stuffiness to her. And I think that's what I like. It's like that's probably the best portrayal of Beatrice. But yeah, I was kind of heartbroken a little bit by the portrayal of Beatrice in this film. Okay, so my thoughts. The best Mrs. De Winter, I would say Joan Fontaine. The best Maximilian De Winter, Jeremy Brett. The best portrayal of the two characters together is the 1997 version with Amelia Fox and Charles Dance. Best Danvers, Diana Rigg, 100%. And then the best Mandalay and the best sets will go to the 2020. So, now analysing this, I said the best characters together are the 1997 version. And the best Danvers is the 1997 version. So although I like the one that has my heart is the 1979, on analysing it, I'd probably say the 1997 version is probably the best. So that's a bit of a shock to me. I've just realised that now. My goodness. So, let me know. Have you watched any of these TV versions? Did I go too far? Did I talk about Rebecca a bit too much? What do we like the best? Do we like the book best? Do we like the versions of Rebecca best? Let me know in the comments. Let me know as well how I did. This is my first ever attempt at doing a book review. I've never done anything like this before, so I hope that I did a good job. And I really, really hope that you've enjoyed me waffling on for this long about my favourite book. Now, another thing that I want to double check is, do we want to do another book club? Do we want to do this again? Do you think every other month? I'm thinking every other month is probably going to be more feasible for myself. So let me know what you think. Also, if you've enjoyed the podcast today, make sure you give me a subscribe, give this video a like, and I will see you either on Wednesday in our Chit, Chat and Crochet podcast, or I will see you on Sunday where we talk about our crochet projects of the week. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next time.